All right, guys, we're back with another episode of the VeeFam Sessions, episode number 2, and I'm here. So grateful to be here with the first VeeFriends Millionaire, Orlando Ricky Debler. Ricky, thanks so much for hopping on. How are you?
Doing very well. It's my pleasure. Greetings from sunny Orlando, Florida. It is 7:34 this evening, and VCon is just around the corner, so very excited.
VCon is just around the corner, and the excitement you can feel it through the wavelengths here, in any platform that you use. So, Ricky, I'm going to give you a hard stop at May 2021, but before that, could you just give us a little context on a little bit about you? You know what you do. You know what you were like growing up. Just the cliff notes.
Yeah, certainly.
Definitely stop at May 2021, though.
Yeah. So you want me to stop at May 21 or start from May 21?
Stop at May 21.
Certainly. So my early story comes from a sense of family and tradition, which stems from Mexico. Mexico is where both my mom and mother are from. And that in itself is really what catapulted not only the sense of where we came from, but as well our, I guess, family business, how all of that came from our family restaurant in Mexico City. So that restaurant in Mexico City is still here to this day. And Disney approached us to bring our family restaurant into World Showcase, which is located in Walt Disney World. So as a third party like ourselves, we're able to celebrate our cuisine, our tradition, and also our story. So our story comes from multiple generations. I'm a Ricky, my father's a Ricky, and my grandfather's also a Ricky. So it's a Ricky and Ricky world for us. And with Gary Vaynerchuk and his dynamic of family business, I always felt a sense of synergy, alignment, understanding. And with his world with wine, my world was heavily governed with tequila. Tequila is an integral part in the food and beverage business, especially with Mexican cuisine. And it's something that I was able to gravitate, learn, and educate in the same way Gary has done. With that being said, over the years, I've also enjoyed all forms of social media content. I've always been a practitioner of creating, always documenting, and Gary really celebrated a lot of those things that I felt strongly about. With that being said, during the pandemic, we all found, I guess, unique optimism and ways to change our ways and lifestyles. And one thing I was able to have a lucky experience was winning in Snapchat Spotlight. So Spotlight was a feature on Snapchat. And at the time, my girlfriend and I were able to actually win. And not just once, but a few times. So her and I were actually able to get paid out in six figures each. And that in itself was what allowed me to enter into the new NFT space with Gary Vaynerchuk's VeeFriends collection. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have been so, what I would say, invested. I would have been, but not to that degree. But because of the Snapchat liquidity that I was able to receive from that contest, I was able to say, you know what? I do believe in Gary Vaynerchuk. I do believe and what he's capable of. And also bear in mind, all of that was on a condition of not knowing any of what will come next. In the same sense of Bored Ape Yacht Club, in the same sense of many others, no one knew that it was going to get to 200,000 plus and so on. So it was a very fun evolution and chapter. And that's what led me to get to that point in May in 2021.
I love it. That's an amazing story. Going back a little bit, and you already mentioned Gary. When was the first time you remember hearing the name Gary Vee?
So the first time ever, it wasn't in a social medium of any kind. It was actually at a restaurant conference, and it was called MUFSO, the Multi-Unit Food Service Operator Conference, and I believe it was in Denver at the time, maybe mid 2015, 2016, somewhere around that era. And he was the one of the keynote speakers for this conference. And here he was explaining to the crowd and highlighting to the crowd about everything that needs to be known about social media. Also breaking down a lot of the preconceived, what I would say, hesitations and lack of adoption, and how all of this is going to change and radically evolve the worlds that we live in. So he really took my attention. Also, his style, as we all know, is very authentic. And so after his speech, I waited for the meet and greet, got to him, and the only thing I asked him at that time was, what's the one biohack that allows you to live the life you live today? He looked around, he thought about it for a second. He's a very quick thinker, but he's also thoughtful. And he told me, babysitter, get a babysitter. So a busy guy like him, when it comes to raising a child, I'm sure that must be very busy. But that was the first time I ever met him. And then that moment moving forward, I got in some ways exposed to his podcast, exposed to his YouTube channel, and his message resonated with me in a lot of ways.
I love that. So, so being a follower of his content, probably before May 2021, but you hear about this thing called VeeFriends. Do you have, talk to me about your understanding of NFTs and blockchain technology at that time?
Yeah. So all of it was very indicative to my podcast consumption. Within that world of podcast consumption, Kevin Rose was one of those that really kind of helped shape my understanding of that world. I also had very close friends that were early adopters who have done exceptionally well in crypto. But with regards to the onboarding, it was only Gary which kind of allowed me to learn and have the data onboarding, to learn the process, to develop my MetaMask, and to do it safely. But before that, I kind of had a general sense of where all of this was going. Also, I felt like this was the greatest way of getting to what I would say anyone that you aspire to learn from by owning these NFTs will allow you to have closer access to these individuals. So, in some aspect during that period of time, you could have looked at opportunities to go back to do your studies, graduate studies, masters, and things of that nature. But once I saw what this was becoming, I said to myself, well, this is as close to a graduate study experience you can create. You have the Discord, you have close access, and you're actually able to develop a whole new world where from getting a Hangout Hawk with having FaceTimes, to getting physical gifts with the gift goats, and then just seeing how these communities emerge. And when it comes down to participation and involvement, it's not a matter of just joining today. It's also in some ways growing with the community. So what better way to grow with a brand new community and watching it literally be born in the universe that we see it being created today?
Yeah, so fascinating. So you obviously had a lot of foresight about where the whole thing was going early on. Did you, there was originally a 5/5 launch May 5th to 2021. Did you go into this thinking like I'm gonna put my whole, I don't know if it's the whole bag, I'm gonna make a huge investment in this thing and
Yeah.
in? Like, what were your initial goals, thoughts about it heading into that mint?
So I guess a lot of us, whenever you have a bite of, let's say, a piece of cake or ice cream for that matter, you always go back for more. So once you get a taste of it, you want to get more of it. But a lot of it
Sure.
was kind of what I would say, I was in a strong observation position, with regards to how the website, the launch, the technical issues, there was a lot of unknowns. I wasn't so familiar with regards to the gas fees. I wasn't so familiar with how a lot of this buy and sell dynamics will be moving. I wasn't aware of OpenSea. I wasn't aware of any of that. So in that moment, I had a particular amount of crypto that I purchased with ETH, and I was strictly observing. Now, as things were moving along very fast, with the Dutch auction, you always kind of find the best value within the time dimension of the auction. And as things got down to 0.5, there was one character that really, took my attention. And in some sense, it's my own personal style. It's my personal ownership. But I was somewhat discouraged to choose characters that people were celebrating. I was very discouraged to choose the very, 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 very lucky Black Cat or the Adventurous Astronaut. Because for me, it wasn't mine. It was every sense Gary. It was very sense the community. It was IP that I didn't feel a very strong connection with. I've always wanted to be the underdog in any kind of scenario. I've always wanted to kind of develop this opportunity to grow into whatever I'm working towards. So out of all the characters, Ernest Ermine was getting no love. He was at the floor. Nobody was buying him. And in that sense, that was my first purchase. It was an Ernest Ermine core. And it was the most simplistic of all the drawings. It wasn't whimsical. I mean, an Ermine is a stout. It's a weasel. People misconstrued it as a cat. And I went for it. And in that moment, bear in mind in my personal life, I was getting out of a long-term relationship. So here I am as, recently single. My risk tolerance now is much higher because you're no longer in a stable relationship. And that little guy, that little Ermine was there for me. And I just looked at that guy with such, smiling eyes. And I said, you're my buddy. And in that second, I posted on Twitter, Gary Vaynerchuk followed me back. And that moment it clicked. And I said, you know what? Ermine is mine. I want no one to have him but me. I will collect all 40 of the Ermines.
I saw you said that.
So I began.
Is that still the goal?
That was the goal. So it began my journey to start collecting the highest rarities of them and then working my way from the top down. So I started collecting all of the spectaculars, and each of the spectaculars had different schedules. So not all of them were available at the same moment. So I first acquired 2 and then 3. And then the other ones I have to wait. And as each of those become available, I had to wait for the price to drop. Now, anybody could have bought it at any given moment. So I was holding my breath with each minute that went by when it was available. And then when I was finally able to complete my 5 spectaculars, I literally felt like Thanos completing his Infinity Gauntlet. I felt like I just had all this power. And then I also completed the epics as well. So I had all the epics, all the spectaculars. And then I wanted to move forward and start collecting all of the very rares as well. So I was able to get 2. And I wanted to get 3 more. And as each of these purchases went by, in my mind, I was like, I only had a 20 ETH cap. I was like, you know what? I'm only going to spend 20 ETH. That's as far as it's going to go. No, I went beyond that. Before you know it, a gift goat is in my wallet. Hangout Hawk is in my wallet. Yeah. To the Moon, a Meerkat in my wallet. Stun Sun. So all of a sudden, all these things started just kind of just happening. And then before you know it, you look back and you look in your wallet and you're like, wow, I have 20 VeeFriends now. And that kind of accelerated pretty fast. But that Ermine dynamic in my mind, I that was my I guess my vision is I want to make the Ermine owners proud by being a direct representation of it as a person, as a human being, as a VeeFriends community member. And I felt a very strong responsibility with that.
Wow, that's amazing. And while you're talking, I just want to let anyone listening know, and it's amazing that you listen to Gary in a lot of senses, but in this one, this document, Don't Create, pretty much everything that Ricky just said is in his Instagram stories, like videos of him minting the Ermine. Right?
Yes.
I know the get said the Ermine there, like little videos and snapshots of this in the story. So I love that. Especially since it's the first day, it's V1. A lot of people have done it since then, but just historically, it makes me so happy. Especially to hear you narrating it, and I'm visualizing me going through your stories in it. So that's amazing. And then just how you connected to that Ermine is so amazing. And people, and Gary kind of alludes to this a lot too when people are asking for alpha on this character and this character. And we just don't know. You don't know what's going to hit one person, how a character is going to hit one person, and then who knows? Maybe IP develops from that, or things kind of take on a life of their own. So I love that underdog. I have a lot of underdog DNA in me. I stand at 5'4", when I'm standing up straight. So that's definitely in me. So. Amazing stories. So I was going to ask you, did you have a budget and exceed that? So yes. I got my answer there.
Yeah, I definitely exceeded it. So in my mind, I was looking at what I had and that liquidity of income that I had. And, to be a very honest person, how much I had, it was a great amount. I was looking at about $180,000. And out of that $180,000, it went up to about $220,000 that I ended up spending. So, after that moment, I was not liquid. I didn't have much cash left in my account. Also, there was taxes I had to pay for my winnings from the year that I incurred the winnings from Snapchat. So I was over leveraged. So not only here I am taking this risk and gamble, but in every sense of it, what I did was extremely, what I would say, reckless in the sense of not assimilating the appropriate means to accommodate those tax profits that I incurred. So that was an interesting moment. But everything for me just became a method of storytelling. It came from a method of intention, and a lot of it just made sense of finding a story and believing in it. So not only is it me gravitating towards the character Ermine, it was gravitating towards a purpose. So in some ways, I could have just swept the floor. I could have just bought random characters. But then if people ask me why, the why and not being able to answer it perplexes me. So not being able to have a story, like in the same sense in the world that I work in with Disney, as a third-party contractor in our locations, you kind of have to understand that everything is enveloped with a story, and you have to celebrate it. So that story also continued with one character. I bought a spectacular gold sympathetic squid, and at the time, that was the only cephalopod octo-related creature that was available. My friend Warren, he runs the largest Octo Nation octopus fan club in the world. So in that moment, I called them up and I said, "Hey, friend, I have a gift for you, and this is for you." And I was like my gift to him and bringing him into the world. Now, fast forward, it got to the point where we'll get to that story later on. But for me, it was all about coming together, developing story, bringing people on board, and then during all of this, Jeremy, as everybody knows, want to be a VeeFriend and our heart trooper and our community leader. He was part of the journey with me along the way, and him and I were sharing our thoughts, sharing our concerns, sharing our worries, and also our excitement. So him and I were just kind of growing into this story, and also with others. And that was when the Discord was very small. That was when, the Discord wasn't to the same scale and size as it was. And that story became very true to me. But in that sense, in every aspect of it, my mind was fixated. How do I get the 40 Ermines? How do I get enough ETH to get to that goal? And that became my obsession, my buying the Jets moment, I guess you can say.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so that was a real goal. That wasn't just I know you wrote it in a tweet, but that was that was in you.
I had two goals. One goal I set up around that period of time, which was to reach $1 million in sales from social media, and then I kind of included NFT into that goal. So I kind of had some momentum already from Snapchat. I was getting some traction on TikTok. So with all this monetization opportunities, in my mind, with the goal in being set, it was, can I make $1 million in a year? And I said, you know what, I can. And this is something I'm going to move towards. So you look at other collections, you look at other opportunities, and Super Yeti was the next collection that caught my interest. So I aped in. I bought 149 Yetis, and a lot of aspects of that was also into a learning curve, was to learn how a community can grow organically, not from a bigger audience like Gary Vaynerchuk's world, but from a different audience, from a different world, and also to be very involved with it. And also in my back of my mind, it was also a vehicle for potentially using the success of this particular collection into achieving my Ermine goal. But then again, you learn with each of these releases, you learn how the market grows, and then you kind of move and you kind of pivot, and you always have to adapt. And one of those adaptations was me buying a Bored Ape pretty early on. And that was another fun, exciting moment of watching that grow and build. So in terms of my growth, I got very lucky very early between Bored Ape and VeeFriends.
I don't want to get off track, but are you one of those that bought a Bored Ape in between 5.5 and then when VeeFriends actually launched?
Yeah, so I bought it around the first week of June or so, around the first or second week of June. So I bought, it was the floor price of the apes were I think around 2 at the time, 1.8, 1.9. And there's this thing about going back to finding something that has a story and a connection. So the cheetah ape, I loved that whole dynamic. It kind of resembles a lot of what I feel in terms of lifestyle and fashion. And so I thought, you know what, this cheetah ape, I got to get it. I think it was 3 ETH at the time, or 3.5, which was much more elevated than the floor price. And I pulled the trigger. And this is where it gets really crazy with the story. So when I purchased it, I was able to get in contact with the owner. And I asked him, where are you from? He says, Mexico. And I said, well, my family's from Mexico. And I told him, by any chance, have you been to this restaurant, Sena Halim? And he goes, actually, my parents are just eating there right now at this moment. So the moment I purchased the ape, his family was eating at my family restaurant in that same moment.
That's amazing.
So it was a very surreal moment of who would have thought the timing of all of this, in the world of NFTs, in the world of being anon and the mystery of where all of us are coming from. It could have been anybody, anywhere. That was a pretty surreal moment.
That's a cool story. Wow. So you're doing a great job of answering my questions prior to me asking them. So you had the Ermine goal plus that $1 million. Now, quick side note, you sound very savvy. I know you mentioned you had crypto before, but did you do investing before NFTs? Did you?
No, I mean, if anything, I think there's periods of adoption. I think a lot of us were in a period of adoption in the last years with regards to the movement you saw with a lot of Robinhood adopters. There was that movement with regards to AMC. There was movement with Dogecoin. There's all these opportunities and dynamics where I kind of explored, but never have done something to this level. So if anything, I was very novice in every sense of it. But the one thing that I'm not a novice in is conviction. So when it comes to my determinism, in the same sense, what Ermine is known for is being earnest, that is definitely a characteristic of who I am. So that in itself allowed me to move very quickly, and intelligence and savviness and all of that just stems from being passionate. So that passion allowed me to go further and go deeper and consume and learn and observe. And it was just a really fun kind of what I would say moment. And in that time, I remember you were saying and following my stories, you saw the structure in my life. I had a schedule every day. I posted it, and I allowed people to follow my process. So it was really fun to kind of bring people into my world, show my process, and also be very open. With a lot of people in this space, especially Web3, they don't want to be they want to be anonymous. They want to be careful. And I feel like with the blockchain having a state of permanence, it's best to be forward, it's best to be public. And as long as you understand what it means to you, as long as it makes you happy, I say, more is better. So I wanted people to learn, but also I was very hesitant. I was not someone that wanted to convince my friends to join. I wasn't someone that was dragging people along and saying, you have to do this. No, I told everybody, hey, if you're interested, please, contact me. But out of my whole circle of friends, not one person joined, not one. So I was the only one. I was the only one.
Interesting. And did your family, it sounds like, you work and you're very close to your family. Did they know like you're over leveraging buying all these JPEGs?
There is, yeah. So yeah, JPEGs, as we like to say them, right? So yeah, there was a lot of concern. There was a lot of concern. And in a lot of ways, that's the first thing of any rule of thumb with any kind of investing is take your profits. And things have grown and things have done somewhat well in the early days. And so the biggest thing was like, well, why haven't you sold? Why haven't you taken a profit? What's going on? What's moving forward? And there was always a lot of back and forth. And it was very cautious. It wasn't really an intention of dissuadement, or there wasn't any ill intention, but if anything, it was a place of love and concern. It wasn't until I sold my 8 months later that all of a sudden they start taking real notice, because all of a sudden US dollars are now present, and those US dollars are real, and those in themselves are life-changing economics. So when it comes to family in every sense of it, there were some aspects of saying, be careful, but there was still a lot of confusion from a lot of people.
Did you have an initial, you have this lofty, I want to make $1 million, flipping this, did you have an initial roadmap of an idea of a timeline, or I know it sounds like you have your principles, but did you have kind of like, I want to do this, make this by this date, or to talk to me about that?
Yeah, so May was, I would say February was the kind of like the reach of a goal. So it would be February of 2022 was my month in mind that I have set. Okay. And that was when I created when I won the income from the winnings from Snapchat. So in my mind, February was really the big moment. And that's what I was telling others. That's what I was telling my friends and family, and say, hey, February, I'm going to be making my pivot. But I learned something very valuable with Snapchat. And with Snapchat Spotlight, we were in a Discord, and this Discord was the largest Discord for other Snapchat Spotlight winners and users. And I kind of learned what happened within that community. And within that community, a lot of us, some of us are just average in the sense of we don't come from a pedigree of million subscribers and followers. We're just normal people who post normal content, and we got lucky. And some of us got luckier than others. But our identities got very ingrained with this newfound form of success. And I just observed as the market grows, bear in mind, when you're competing against not just a few million, but millions of other users, it's tough to, what I would say, ensure future occurrences of success. So success in itself is not the hard part. It's how do you continue your form of success? And I kind of observe in how I watch these users start developing what I would say a reality that's setting in, that how challenging it's becoming. And the more your identity gets consumed in that, the more opportunities you lose looking elsewhere. So I learned very quickly that when it comes to success, it's not associating it as I am successful. It's more in the sense of association that I was successful, and ensuring that you're looking ahead and where that next moment of opportunity of success could be. So in that kind of context, I noticed after about 7 months, things fizzled out, and the same momentous adoption of Spotlight and the same user identities fizzled out. So I was thinking in my mind, well, I think in a lot of sense, trends function in the same way. Crypto functions in a much quicker vacuum, but most things function in these cycles. So, when it comes to hype, user adoption, and then when it comes to more of a wider adoption, then there comes down to this phasing out. So in my mind, once I realized that, I'm like, wait a second, you can't get your identity lost in all of this. And the most important NFT you own is your name. So Ricky Debler, in my forefront of thinking, that is always what's more important. And in some sense, as I got later into the ownership of all of this, I started realizing, you know what? I cannot become Ermine. As much as I love him, I cannot be him. I have to retain my identity of being Ricky Debler, the person who I am, the person my family raised, and the person who has his dreams and ambitions, the human that represents me. And for some people, that identity is life saving and life changing, and that gives them the strength. But for me, I personally think, in my own sense of branding, my own sense of identity, I can never lose it. I always need to keep that sense of identity strong.
I love that, and I think that's so important in this space because people are losing sight. But you kind of see snippets of it now. Gary always warns people, don't over leverage yourself. But people, when things are going great, everything's great. But when things are going down, people kind of lose their way a little bit, and keeping your self-docs and keeping the humanity, the personalization of it, I think helps that, keeps people kind of focused on what's important. So I'm so happy to hear you say that, whether you're playing at high stakes with tens of thousands of dollars like you, or you're dealing with a couple thousand or even $500 that maybe you shouldn't have been playing.
And I only learned that.
So
I only learned that in one moment, and that moment came to listing my ape. The moment I listed my ape, that was the moment. And when it actually sold, that was the moment where I learned that valuable lesson. And that valuable lesson is detachment. And in that moment, you're overjoyed. I was crying. Here I am as a 32-year-old man crying, over a cell of a JPEG, as we jokingly like to say. But that JPEG became all of my identity in many ways. That ape was my identity in every sense of it. It was the badge of I made it. It was the badge that, look at me. I'm one of those that were part of this collections that has been world renowned in its pedigree. And then when I sold it, you're kind of out. You're no longer in the Discord. You're no longer chatting with your friends. You're no longer in the yacht party. You're no longer in the swamp.
yeah,
And in that moment, that detachment allowed me to develop the strength to move forward. And that was the hardest thing, because after detaching from your ape, because you develop such a close connection with, and that's when I realized how powerful NFTs were, is that when it comes to any stock I've ever purchased or any other acquisition, I've never felt that emotional connection. I never cried when I sold stock, never have. But when I sold NFT and I was just moved emotionally, I realized how powerful this truly is when it comes to how it represents you. So now the next hard emotional hurdle was, removing my attachment to Ermine. And it kind of started by selling other VeeFriends. And that in itself was one of those things where I never wanted to sell my Ermines. It never was my intention. But as we got closer and closer, a lot of things started coming together. And I started developing what I would say opportunities for others to take advantage from my success. So because of my success, I saw, what? Why can't others get some of these VeeFriends that I purchased at a lower price? Why can't I discount this further? So someone was to purchase this, they have upside. I was criticized by a few. I was criticized by many, and there was a few that were questioning my intention. But in a lot of ways, it just felt right. It felt right for me to give others a chance. And if things move in any way, I felt there was an upside for them to make a profit.
So just for some context, and I think I know, but you were listing specs below the floor,
Substantially way below the floor. So I mean,
can you give us an example?
Yes.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. So so when it comes to the general floor price for, let's say, a holographic spectacular, they were going about 35, 40, 43. I was listing it all the way down to 25. So when it comes down to it, even as well, I was selling an epic for 15. When in that time cores were going for 16. So I think around that range. So I was giving an amazing amount of deals, and also I wanted others to join in on the fun. I sold my gift code at the time, I think 40, while most of them were being listed at 50 plus, or maybe I sold it at 30. I don't remember. It's been a while. But a lot of these I was listing for upside for the buyer.
And again, if you are listening and you want to check, Ricky has all of this literally in all of his stories, and it's 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 a timeline. Everything that we're talking about is there. So please check it out. But without context, you see all these great flips, and people might look at it as like, oh, I want to be. I wish I was a VeeFriends millionaire. I wish I had that bag. But if you look under the hood, as Gary says, like, you're really helping people out. You're giving them a chance. You're sharing the love, which is kind of, brings back to this whole reason I'm doing this. What people are doing in this community to make this more of a family than a community. So that's amazing. I'm sure people are very appreciative. Did people know it was you on some of these transactions?
Yeah. Yeah, in some sense, you have to advertise in the space that we're in. NFTs aren't very liquid. The discovery of the NFT that you're selling could be very difficult to find. And if you're not searching for it, you may not be able to have a transaction. Bear in mind, there are bots that scan the world. And that was my biggest fear, that any listing that I was to make, a bot would buy it. But in the general chat and in the VeeFriends Discord is where I would in some ways make the announcement. And a lot of the announcements were with a sense of urgency, with a sense of intention. And it was in the sense of, even with the Dutch style approach of saying, within the next hour or so, this will be at this price and it will be lowering, subsequently. And I know there's people that were rushing to get ETH, because that's the biggest issue for many, was being able to adequately bring enough ETH to the table. And there's a process to that could be untimely for some. So there was a few others that were rushing to get ETH ready to make those purchases. But it all happened within about a week. So in the month of March, it all happened within that period of time. And then, there's a lot of giving back, and there's a lot of movement towards that. And then also, there's also a lot of uncertainty in the world, and that uncertainty in every sense of us can move us in different ways. And I'm always very mindful of the Pareto principle of the 80-20 dynamic. So within that moment, I understood that in that form of function, I was functioning within that 20 for that 80 output. So a lot of the economics also made sense to me in that moment. And then for those that were also in very good positions, I also expressed to them my intentions. So I gave them a heads up. I said, by the way, within the next few days, I will be doing this. Just be mindful in how this may affect you in any way. I don't want it to negatively affect you, but just position accordingly, as I told many, because I don't know how this could change and how that could shift. So I was I wanted to be courteous to the community in many other ways as well.
It's a very nice etiquette. Sure. So this is in March, and then did all of these sales put you over the hump?
Everything came up to that. So in the terms of sales, I was able to get it. But then in Crypto Slam, they had a metric. If you go to VeeFriends on Crypto Slam and hit all time, you'll see a leaderboard for all time sales. And it had a metric, which was profit. So I was so focused on sales, but I wanted to put it into $1 million profit. So in that moment, it was like, you know what? I need to get to $1 million profit. I got the $1 million sales. I want to get to the $1 million profit. And it's there forever. So when it comes down to the leaderboard and the scoreboard, that's there. And so at that point, that was the hardest decision for me to sell the last of my Ermines, which were the Spectaculars. And I really wanted to keep them all to myself. I wanted to see what will happen with VeeFriends too. I wanted to see the world in which Ermine was going to grow up into. And then each one was sold. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sell the last one, which is the holographic. But it got to that point where that profit and where I needed to go, I needed that last like $50,000 profit. I'm like, you know what? It's meant to be. It's meant to be. And I told all the new buyers, make me proud. This particular NFT means a lot to me. And when I hit that goal, it was surreal. There was a whole new wave of emotions. There was a sense of accomplishment, and it happens in such a way where it doesn't hit you all at once. Also, there's a sense of economics. Your world changes. You have a lot more liquidity. Also, you start thinking about things differently. The way you look at the world changes. Your world opens up in many different ways. But when it comes to who you are as a person, it doesn't change. When you assimilate wealth, it doesn't change much. A lot of the core principles of who you are stay the same. And then moving forward, you start moving into VeeFriends 2 book games, and I went very aggressive into that. I went into that with probably about $500,000 or so. I put into that about $400,000 in total plus between book games and VeeFriends too. And that's where, yeah.
Can we? I just want to pause there for 1 sec. Pardon me, but when you first that day in August when Gary was talking about that, I just want your perspective. Like, what are your initial
Well,
thoughts?
because
Right
it was because it was USD at the time, I didn't have the Ethereum in that moment. All my Ethereum was locked away in my NFTs. So not having the USD available, because I mentioned my liquidity was almost non-existent, I couldn't purchase many books at that time. So in that moment, I actually considered very, very intensely of maybe selling my ape at the time and converting all of that ETH into US dollars and purchasing as many books as I can. So I thought about it, like, I'm going to sell my ape and I'm going to buy all these book games. I'm going to buy all these books. That was the thought. Well, I wasn't able to do it in time. So I was only able to purchase about enough books to get about 15, 20, 25 tokens, somewhere around that range. So then it wasn't until after things were released and book games were available and Token Trove was live, I started collecting and aggregating more and more and more tokens to a point where I had about 290 for the whitelist, friends list. And then now I got to the maximum about 360 tokens, which I've been burning with the luck of the raffle. Hopefully I get more luck. So I was just checking the latest raffle and I was able to get 4 successful raffle winners entries for the Smooth Spider. But that was out of thank you. That was out of 20 entries though. Out of 20 entries. So as of right now, 4, 5, 8, 12. So as of right now, I have 13 entry winnings from the raffle so far. But it's been very challenging. It's been very challenging, been very competitive. And I know many of us are very upset when we saw that guy and his image appear with his little tie and boxers and coffee saying, "Sorry, you're not a winner." It is a very frustrating. So, but I have a lot of gratitude that I've won the many that I have already.
And he's right, and he's trending.
Oh, he is. Oh, he is.
You saw the account, right?
Yeah, but I never thought, to answer your question further, I didn't think book games and things of nature was going to get to this level. I never thought that it would lean into this massive VeeFriends 2 inception of creation.
Staying on the topic of I think you got 71 friends list spots.
Yes,
is that correct?
I did.
I thought I read that. Yeah. So with that, can you just take me to the moment really quick when you first saw the glitch with sympathetic squid?
Good. So when the glitch came in,
talk to me about your first thoughts when you.
So there was a lot of what I would say buffering, and there was a lot of the metadata and a lot of population of the images. And you're scrolling through, and the thing that we're all thinking is very lucky cat. We're all looking for that black cat. And then I see, all of a sudden things are still populating. And then all of a sudden when I saw that, it was what the hell is that? First off, it's just so weird, so different. And, I wasn't so native with the OpenSea in this particular collection to kind of see where these attributes lay out. But I was like, holy shit, this is big. This is big. So that was very exciting. But in that moment, as cool as it was seeing that, my mind was very focused on the revealing and seeing what opportunities could be there. Because I've never been what you would say a sniper in these collection reveals. I've never done that in the past. So I already had my list of what I would perceive to be the top characters based off Emerald Auction pricing and where those Emerald Auction prices were going. So I was looking in particular for those characters. So even with all that being said, I was still very focused on seeing opportunities in that, and I was looking for certain characters.
Were you at all, did backgrounds or poses play a role in that, or you were just
so I was mostly character driven. I wasn't so savvy with the other metrics. And that being said, I wasn't aware of these special green for green, upside down, white background, all these different mechanisms of rarity that was kind of coming into the forefront. And even to that being said, I didn't realize I had a real robot. So like during all of this, I purchased a few and I realized I already had like 5. so that was pretty funny. And same thing with Harpic. When I saw Harpic pricing becoming available, I started buying Harpic even though I already had some. So another story that I'm kind of thinking about is, why don't you own every VeeFriends character possible? With the amount of volume of VeeFriends 2 characters, why don't pursue each one, in any pose and whatever matters? So that's a story that I've been entertaining in my mind. And I always like to entertain ideas specific to my own story. So I haven't really heard anybody build that story of focus, and that's something that I would like to build towards. So that could happen tomorrow, that can happen in a few months, but just to kind of give you the alpha of what I'm thinking next, that's probably something I'm leaning towards.
So are you going as far as say like that's a goal, or just are we just thinking about
It's
it
a
now?
thought, so as of right now, there's still a dollar cost average that goes into a lot of these decision making
Mhm.
elements, but ultimately, I think that will create a very unique portfolio of potential and possibilities, and that in itself would be very exciting in the sense in which how this represents in the bigger picture, in the sense of how a lot of this is be built around in every sense of what each character can bring to the table, in the same sense what each ingredient can bring to a dish, and in the same sense how a musical instrument can bring towards an orchestra. So in a lot of ways,
Mm.
I like to build out that kind of what I would say ancestral Pokemon collecting cards DNA, which is to get every single card in the collection. So when you collected Pokemon cards, you traded to complete your collection. You played the game to collect all the Pokemon. So that in itself is still very integral in my DNA as a kid, and who I am as a person. And also before all of this, and as I evolved into this space, I was in every sense a collector first. Now I'm an activist, and act in any sense a practitioner of the space now. So before I was just collecting. Now I'm
Mm.
very actively engaged in playing with the market and enjoying the market and seeing what opportunities might be there.
And that's a great segue for what I was going to go to next. I'm just going to read a tweet you wrote on May 3rd, 2022. You said, I'm going to be more vocal. The dynamics of VeeFriends 2 will be massive into 2023 and beyond. At scale, there's nothing close that resonates family than VF2. It's about sharing moments with your family and children. VeeFriends is about growing together in life. And I read that and I was like, wow, like you just articulated everything that I think everyone knows, but just and it is waiting for in anticipation. But where were you when you were thinking that? Like, what do you
So
envision?
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit before I get to that great insight into that tweet. But ultimately, when it comes down to where I was and how I moved into the selling of my NFTs and developed the success that I did from a dollar cost dynamic, I started developing this new thought and identity, which is called moving in silence. So as I moved into that space of selling my NFTs, and in some sense, removing yourself in some aspect, like you're kind of ripping a part of your soul, and that soul is now no longer there. There's a void in your life. Moving in silence allows me to stay true to my intention, not to be dissuaded, to have laser focus, and also to stay in a place of confidence. So what I've learned more and more is the more vocal someone is, there tends to come from a place of insecurity. If you go into any kind of context of conversation and you're just telling everybody how good you are at a sport, well, most times that person explaining themselves that highly isn't, because in some sense you are what I would say finding ways to navigate your shortcomings. So what I learned very quickly was move silently in the space. And the more I learned that, the more things became clear. And it's very easy to look around in the room and say, look at me, I made $1 million. But that in itself can become your Achilles heel. So as I was navigating this post $1 million sale profit era, I started becoming, what, I need to get vocal again. I need to express my ideas again. And in some sense, in that moment, it just felt right. And, in the sense of choosing the year 2023 is kind of arbitrary. No one knows the timing of things. There's a lot of economics right now that we're experiencing that we're seeing now in a real way. But when it comes to emotional utility, that's something I've always described. And people talk about utility, people talk about community, and I think people don't understand the true definition of both of those terms. And I think community, in many ways, has been changed to customer, and I think utility has been changed to a most of what I would say speculation. And now speculation and customers can create a lot of what I would say buyers. But to create a sense of family, there's no speculation in what comes from that. When you marry somebody and you decide to have a child, that is a commitment. There is no speculation of what comes next. You are going to raise that child, you're going to grow with that child, and you're going to form a family. And there's no other option. And the same with what I see with this, I define that as emotional utility. There's no other option but for all of us to grow with the IP in the sense that it moves our emotions. So in the world of hospitality, in the world that I'm in, you don't sell objectively in the scale of black and white. You don't sell people on the facts. You sell people on the emotions. You sell people on the dreams. You sell the condition of happiness. And it's not just really a sell. If anything, you're participating in a way that you create a form of entertainment, of excitement that they're able to share in a form of a memory. So the more I talk about VeeFriends amongst myself and others, the more I realize that there's strong emotional utility tied into this. And that's going to be in every sense integrated in a way where most of these collections haven't, in the sense in which one reason why I bought Super Yetis is that it was the most family friendly NFT at the time. There was these cute, fuzzy NFT Yetis that looked like they can be friends with any kid on the planet. And, I guess in some ways now they became like a clown in a sense. There's a meme culture behind it. And I still believe that Super Yetis will have their time, and especially with the sandbox coming soon. But that emotional utility is what I think in Project will grow further, and how these characters you bring into other people's lives. And memes are every sense of how we share our ideas, and not in the sense that they're funny, is that there's emotional contexts that go into it. In the same way you share a meme to your friends, you're going to be sharing these VeeFriend characters to describe a feeling, emotion, an idea. Memes are very powerful vehicles, and I think a lot of memes are aspiring within the collection in a positive way, not in a negative connotation.
Absolutely. And I'm experiencing that just now. I have a 3-year-old son, and we were watching the Rare Robot video over and over on repeat, and he's going around just saying the VeeFriends, the little sound clip, and it's real, and I have all the feels for it, and I just think about what that's going to do in all these households and the conversations that's going to start. Exactly, just what you said. Exactly. I'm not going to even try to restate it, but oh man, just the emotional attachment that it's going to bring for contextually to everyone's situation.
And what I can't wait is once we develop tension with some of these, what I would say, fringe characters, these characters that would be considered the villains. And we all want a hero, and that always means that we need to have a villain. So the funny adaptation of all this positivity that we're talking about is also inviting the next, I guess, what I would say, wave of tension that allows the good to shine. So as we like to say, suffocating hate. I cannot wait for all of this hate that has emerged in whatever way that might be to allow all this positivity to shine. So that in itself there's really going to be another turning moment in the world that we're in with VeeFriends.
I feel that way about the Oak Monster. I'm calling it, the Oak Monster was misunderstood the whole time. By the way, you have you have a strategizing Oak Monster. I saw it I forget the name, but the forest, which is just perfect. I love that one. Real quick, what does the word community mean to you?
In some ways, it has shifted over the years, and in every sense of it, I think community is what I would say, a group of individuals that have the same vision. They follow the same, what I would say, potential in each and every one of them, in that community of growth, and sharing that in ways that today we can, and the forms of technology that we have to connect in ways we've never seen before. So communities can grow very organically. There are some communities that are not organic, and those you have to be very careful from the transactional dynamic of sense. But communities are essential, and communities form in every different stage of our lives. The younger we are, the greater need we need to have a community. As you get older, your community becomes your family, and you become, what I would say, dedicated to forming and building on that. But in some ways, in some form, we all need somewhere to belong. We find that in sports, we find that in religion, we find that in mentorship, we find that in love. So I think in every sense of it, it's absolutely essential. You can't live without it.
I love that. 2 quick character questions, and we're going to end with some rapid fire here. So if there was something happened to the blockchain and wallets, and you could only have one of your VeeFriends NFTs across V2, book games, VF1. It
would be buying my VeeFriends 1 core Ermine, the exact same one, not another core. It will be exactly the same one. I will have that framed. I will sleep with it at night. I'll say good morning. I'll tuck it in at night. That thing, It's I cannot describe my love for that guy. It's profound.
I love it. I figured you would go there, but I just didn't want to assume. Which VeeFriends character do you feel like you need to spend the most time
I
with?
think in a lot of ways it's to allow the characters to breathe. I think we're suffocating a lot of these characters too early. We're putting a lot of too much attention. So if anything, I want to disconnect from all the characters. I want the characters to organically grow. And that's in some ways why what I was put off with all that early love for those big so-called characters in the VeeFriend 1 auction. So I think you need to allow things to breathe. Just like a relationship, it takes time to grow. Just like in careers and your development, you need to be somewhat progressive in your responsibility of action as you grow your career. So I think of any sense, my attention is to actually be disconnected and getting to know the people first, and then allowing the characters to grow with time.
That's fantastic. I love that. All right, real quick, I call this micro macro spitfire. So you can get really detailed with your answer, or just give a general macro answer, but really quick. All right, the first one. If you're just getting into VeeFriends, who do you need to follow in this
So what I
space?
would say is don't be in tune with every message, with every tweet, with every comment. What you need to be in tune with is with yourself. So the first thing that I would encourage you to do is first improve whatever you can about your life first before you allow yourself to allow others to tell you what to do next. So you need to develop a sense of order and structure in your life, because this community, in the world that we're in, there's a lot of influence. One tweet is what it takes to confirm your beliefs. It can confirm your sense of financial investment. So the first thing I would say is follow Gary Vaynerchuk, listen to his podcast, follow his YouTube channel, see him on TikTok, IG Reels, all forms of content, and utilize that as a way of first establishing yourself and identity first. Once you have that figured out and you know who you are and what you are, and you have a sense of balance in your life, whether that's your health, your love, social, career, and your dream, then enter the space, because the space can also distract you. It can give you the foolish ambition of saying everybody could win. It can give you that foolish ambition, just like the lottery, that you have a chance. And you do not want to be distracted by that, because in that sense, you can get scammed. People can take advantage of you. So first, build your strength, build your armor, and then get to it.
I love it. Nickelodeon or Comedy Central?
Nickelodeon.
Friends
Neither.
or The Office? Favorite
Favorite
Disney
Disney
park?
park will always for me be Epcot.
Gratitude Gorilla or
Gratitude
Patient
Gorilla.
Pig? 2 hour dinner with 10 people with Gary, or a 10-minute one-on-one
10-minute one-on-one with Gary. And it would be in a place that's completely silent, probably in a forest with a campfire, removed from all of his world. I want him and I to be completely disconnected in those 10 minutes and truly have a one-on-one.
I love it. And this is a bonus one that I'm coming up with on the spot. Give us a piece of Disney alpha that no
I'm
one
a third
knows.
party, so I'm a contractor with Walt Disney World. So when it comes to that whole sense and the storytelling and context of what comes from that, that's way out of my world. But what I could say is that I did preview the Guardians of the Galaxy attraction. It is an incredible ride. It is tremendous. The market is just going to go nuts when they go on it. And not only that, but with the new movie coming soon, there's a lot to enjoy, especially at Epcot with the new expansion and the new experiences being shared there.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, so we're in Charleston. Like I said, we have a 3-year-old, and he's getting to that place where he's ready to go, and so we're in the beginning stages of taking a trip to Orlando. But Ricky, I can't thank you enough for being on. You were, the ultimate ambassador to this space, and I'm so happy that I got to learn from this masterclass. But other people that come in and maybe from looking from afar might say, "Oh, VeeFriends Millionaire! Like, look at all these flips! Like, I can never do that." But when we lift the hood up, you are exactly why this community is the way it is, with all of the giving and the sharing of the love and monetary value in everything. So thank you, and I can't wait to see you and your next goals and what you do in this space, and can't wait
Yeah,
to meet
very
everyone
soon.
at
And
VeeCon
this is
next
also
week.
very inflective for myself, and also hearing your story and your passions and being part of your amazing story that you're creating for all of us to, in some way, in some form. Memories are the only currency that matters in life, and it's going to appreciate. And as these memories, we look back, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, or as Gary says, 40 years, 45 years from now, I cannot wait to see our young faces and our ambition and seeing that and sharing that with our families then.
Gotcha. And just to take a page out of Gary's book to close it, on the record, we have someone that's made $1 million flipping, VF1s, and I'm still on a mission for my first. And he's donating his time and sharing all that he knows with me and with us. So I can't thank you enough. That eclipses the whole thing. Ricky, thanks
Gracias.
so
Take care.
much, and we'll talk soon.